The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host. I'm your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com is my email address. And if you'd like to check out the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is Linda S. Godfrey. She is a researcher and investigator of Wolfmen, Bigfoot, and other cryptids for 27 years, is the author of 18 published books on strange phenomena and people such as The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf, Real Wolfmen, The True Encounters in Modern Arizona's Monsters Among Us, and American Monsters. She's had her own field encounters with cryptids and is a frequent guest on national TV and radio shows. Joining us now is Linda S. Godfrey. And Linda, welcome back to the X Zone. It's been a while since you've been with us.
Yes, it's just a pleasure to be back with you and your listeners. Thanks so much for having me again.
So what have you been up to since you and I last talked?
Books, field excursions, all kinds of things going on. Always taping different, I think I taped 3 different types of TV shows in the last year, something like that. So I get around a little bit, and I just finished a book about a few weeks ago, and I'm waiting for the final acceptance with the publisher. But I'm kind of excited about it because it tackles some really interesting subjects that I haven't gotten into before that are sort of related to the Dogman type of thing. And I think it'll cause a little bit of a stir, so I'm hoping that comes out soon. Always up to the publisher.
Always up to the publisher, isn't that the truth? Linda, for the listeners who may not have had the pleasure of hearing you the last time you were with us, tell us what led you to be interested in the topic of Dogman, or werewolves, Bigfoot, and other mysterious creatures.
Well, it's a surprise to me still, 27 years later, but it was nothing I ever expected. I was working as a reporter and cartoonist for a county newspaper in Walworth County, Wisconsin. That's right on the border with Illinois. And I heard from just some people that I knew that people in my own little hometown of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, were saying that out on the edge of town, on this 4-mile-long road, were this thing that people were trying to describe. And thing was the word that they were using. They would say, well, I saw this thing. I don't know what it was, but if there were such a thing as werewolves, this would be it. And when I found out that our county animal control officer had a manila file folder in his desk that he showed me, opened it up, and it's full of reports from these people who have been phoning in their sightings. And I thought right away, this isn't any hoax, because people who want to play a joke or hoax something do not call the local authorities and give them all of their contact info. And moreover, there were a number of them they ran the gamut from junior high kids to an elderly lady, people of all sorts of income and cultural background and what have you. And it just was not like a cohesive group of people you'd expect plotting to play a big trick. And when I went to talk to them, they seemed like they were telling the truth. I did not think any of them were lying. Some of them still seemed rather scared. Mm-hmm. And so we put together a story. I wrote up my interviews with them, did kind of a hasty sketch describing or showing what one woman had described. I've often wished that I'd known how far that sketch was going to be published and republished. I would have tried to have spent more time on it. But I did this, and my editor and I thought people would have fun with it around here, and then it would go away. Well, it never did. It exploded into Associated Press, and then it went national. We had TV stations, radio stations calling me around the clock. There were busloads of tourists coming up from Illinois to ride the bus down Bray Road and take a bar tour, get silver bullet specials. It had become this media phenomenon. Inside Edition came out, and an early sci-fi show. So it went national.
So tell me, with all this attention being brought to this creature, has it ever been seen again?
Yes. Oh, yeah. There are sightings, up to just about present times. The big flurry of sightings and reports, which actually, when people call in, they're not always calling because they just saw something. Some of these sightings were 10 years old already. Mm-hmm. So we had a big clump or cluster of sightings, and then it's kind of smoothed out since then. Every once in a while, someone will cite it. And I don't believe that every sighting by any means is reported. And the big thing, there were several big takeaways from this whole thing. One was that I learned it was not just a local phenomenon, because people started calling me from all over the place, other countries even. So I realized it was something bigger than just one little town's pet monster, if you want to call it that. And then the other one was that people were terribly, terribly interested in it, and much beyond my expectation. And I went for 10 years before I thought, okay, something has got to be all put together. And that was when my first book on the subject came out back in 2003. So it was about 10 years that I just worked at the newspaper. And every time after that something would get published, another book, it would bring another whole spate of sightings. And I realized the depth of it, and I began to see patterns in it and began to study it, in different ways rather than just reporting these stories.
How come it hasn't been identified or captured yet on film with bringing that all-conclusive smoking gun photograph or video that actually need to be seen by not only members of the paranormal community, but the members of the public and by the scientific community?
Right. That's always the $64,000 question. And, it's exactly the same thing with any other hidden or cryptid animal, such as Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. We never get the great proving photograph that says, yep, this is it. Or right now, video would probably be the more appropriate. You can't deny it. You have to admit, yes, they exist. This is it. We don't know why. There are a lot of theories. One theory is that all of these creatures exist in sort of a partly here, partly there into the next zone of living or another realm or whatever, and so that they are unable to be photographed perfectly by our instruments. But
is that a factor? Is that a way of the believers getting away out of the coin? Getting away from the reality of actually having to prove it?
That's a fair question, and I think that it's kind of both. You can set up some scientific paradigms to show that, but it is probably the only thing that we can come up with that really points that direction. The other direction is that people are just always, all the time, and I don't think this is possible because of the hundreds and hundreds, and if you get into Bigfoot too, thousands of sightings of these things. It can't always be someone hoaxing it. It cannot always be someone catching a glimpse of a bear or a shadow.
If there are so many
like
people out there, how come nobody's taken the picture? How come nobody's got the proof? How come there hasn't been a cadaver found?
It's impossible to answer that right now. I don't know the answer to that. Like I said, there are theories. It's one thing I wonder about personally, and I've tackled this in many of my books, because I can't help but notice that, and I have trail cams. I've worked with people using multiple trail cams, and in almost every instance they're thwarted. But something like a cougar comes along, which is an equally elusive animal, or a bear, and they're perfect, in their perfect 2D glory on the film.
But wouldn't that suggest to somebody that, all right, if a cougar can get photographed, if a bear can get photographed, if in fact there was a cryptid, that they too would get photographed, and yet they never do. So how can we take this seriously?
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, it's the thing that I keep looking at, and on the other hand, it's the thing that keeps me very curious. If it shouldn't be there, and there are other things that tell me that too. I've talked to wildlife experts and wolf experts all over the United States, asking if they have ever tagged and collared a group of wolves or whatever that then they saw walk upright as a matter of natural course, and they haven't. So all of these things say no, it shouldn't be here. And
all
yet,
right, Linda, we've got to take our break. Please stand by. Exonation Linda Godfrey is our guest. www.lindagodfrey.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Gwilda Wiyaka's latest book, The Science of Magic, Book of Mysteries, Volume 1, is the first book in a series based on her writings that open every episode of the Science of Magic radio show. Drawing on the subject matter of each guest, and armed with over 40 years' experience in shamanism, 35 years in alternative health, and degrees in psychology and religious studies, Gwilda introduces relevant and leading-edge information that supports spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Rich with wisdom and inspirational quotes packaged in digestible segments, this is a book that will pull you from cover to cover. It will also serve as a daily inspirational reading for years to come. The Science of Magic Book of Mysteries, Volume 1 is available at our website, tsompublications.com, amazon.com, and wherever fine books are sold. Linda Godfrey is my guest this hour, X Zone Nation. We're talking about everything from Dogman to Bigfoot here on the X Zone. Her website is www.lindagodfrey.com. Why do you think, without any evidence, that so many people take Bigfoot and other cryptids seriously?
Well, because they keep seeing them, or people keep seeing them, and that is actually what keeps me interested and curious. There are just so many people who've seen them. You know, for a long time, I knew people who had seen these things personally. I've since had a couple of experiences myself, and I still don't think that I can say what they are. All I know is that they're nothing else that you could possibly recognize as being from this earth, and they are there to some extent. Native American friends that I've talked with from different tribes have all told me approximately the same thing, which is that both the Dogman and the Bigfoot are what they would originally call spirit animals that come from another world, and that they're able to visit here. And when they're here, they're completely blood and flesh type creatures that need to eat and do other things, but they can go back when they want to. And that there's a sliding scale between full reality here and full what we would call unreality when they're, at this other place. And actually that makes the most amount of sense given all of the different things that people describe seeing. But again, it's just so many people that seem like sober, credible, people who aren't trying to hoax or do anything else have seen them and keep seeing them. That's what keeps me trying to figure out why. Why is that? What are they seeing? There must be something.
Well, you must admit that the paranormal industry is a good cash cow for people, as well as municipalities and other people who seem to make a dollar off anything that can be labeled paranormal. And it seems that the longer these claims are made of the existence of, for example, Bigfoot and Dogman, Loch Ness Monster, and no proof is being supplied, the more skeptical and disbelieving the rest of the public is.
Well, that's true. Although I've kind of noticed that this sort of thing seems to run in cycles. Starting maybe in these modern times, you could say Ivan Sanderson, who started out, he was very well educated in many scientific fields and started out writing articles on Bigfoot for men's magazines. And eventually his generation kind of died, and then it started up again. And there have been like 3 or 4 of these cycles. And in between, it kind of goes away, and then it comes back. So all this recent interest in Bigfoot and even the Dogman is not a new thing. It seems to kind of come and go and catches people's interest. And a lot of the times it really is because people know someone who's had an experience. They believe them. Often it's a family member or someone like that. And it's just this sharing of the experience and thinking it can't be a complete planet of all liars, and they do leave some evidence, with Bigfoot especially. You get the tracks, although I'm always on the alert for hoaxes, and they can be faked. You have to be very careful.
Oh, sure they can, yeah.
and selective.
What other kind of evidence has been found to support the claims of the cryptids in our society?
Well, you do get some films, for instance, the Gimlin-Patterson film that was made in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
That showed the female. This is still really controversial. I think the jury is still out. But a lot of people say, well, back in the 60s, you wouldn't have had such a sophisticated suit as it would take for this creature to be shown for the.
What about when you get people like Bob Hieronymus, who says that he was in that suit and who passed several lie detector tests?
Right, but
and yet Gimlin never took a lie detector test. Patterson refused. So,
yeah, I know.
So what does that say?
That's why I say it's very controversial still to this day. But on the other hand, the first episode of Monster Quest that I did, they asked me to go out and round up whatever Bigfoot or Wolfman witnesses I could find that we could get to go through this through the process in a room in one day. and we had 7 people from all different walks of life, and every single one of them passed the lie detector test with flying colors, much to the producer's surprise. They thought sure there were a couple of people in there who wouldn't, and every single one of them showed no evidence of deception, and they had gotten a top-tier person who worked for different municipalities in Minnesota and especially Minneapolis, who was well known for his expertise. They didn't have just, your next door neighbor with some old machine. He had the state-of-the-art digital polygraphs to use, and every single one of them passed. So when you've got people passing polygraph tests on both sides, and these were people who many of them had very close-up daylight, long enough sightings that they were sure that they saw what they saw.
And yet no photos.
And yet no photos.
All these years, and now with everyone having an iPhone or a handheld device that has, high definition photo capabilities in it, we're still not seeing any photos. In fact, we're seeing fewer now than there were in the past.
Yeah, I think people, people are realizing, they're realizing if they've got something that's just a fuzzy-looking brown thing in the picture that is not worth submitting, nobody's going to take them seriously. But it is very, very much more difficult to catch a good picture from a moving car of a moving creature than you might imagine. Last week on Wednesday, it was a week ago, my husband and I saw a green fireball go momentarily over the road up in the sky when we were driving home about 9 p.m., and before we could move or do anything, we both saw it very clearly, and moreover, our descriptions of it were affirmed by over 100 other sightings that occurred unknown to us in 4 states. It's in the American Meteor Society site. And there was absolutely no way I could have taken my cell phone, aimed it, and gotten a good shot of that. And I've also spent time, I spent one evening in a place where there were 4 different confirmed sightings, and a friend of mine had a police camera that she had borrowed from a relative of hers for nighttime shots, and we drove all around slowly. We saw different animals. We saw a deer. We saw a fox from fairly close range, expecting it with the camera out the window, and none of these shots turned out like you would want them to or expect them to if we caught the animal at all. It's very difficult to do. Not that people shouldn't keep trying. And actually, we would have had the video of that meteor had we been in my car, which has a dash cam on it. And some people did catch videos of that particular meteor that matched, by the way. So I'm hoping that with all the dash cams and other now they've got little cameras you can put on your glasses and just tap them, that sooner or later we'll get something that works.
And what happens? What happens if you don't?
Well, perhaps it all goes away. I don't know. And I've always been from the very beginning trying to keep my reporter's hat on and not be invested in one answer or the other. I always try and give all the views of it that I can think of for any given instance, and then allow people to have their own opinions. And if it did turn out that for some grand reason there was a great scheme that all these people were hoaxing, or that some mass delusion had overtaken that nobody ever had known of before, if that's what it ended up being, well, then I would accept that.
So how do we explain the fact that there are so many people who believe in ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, lake monsters, and the list goes on and on and on? Let's just take the example of in Southern California, in southern LA, there's 1,300 ghost groups. Well, across the United States, there are over 300,000 ghost investigators. And I'm sure there's the equal number of ufologists as well as the same number for Bigfoot enthusiasts and so on and so forth. So you've got all of these people out there. Nobody is coming up with any proof. To me, as an investigator, if this was a criminal case that I used to investigate in the police force, it would have me looking and saying, you know what? Something is desperately wrong with this case. If we can't find any of the suspects, Then we have to start looking at the people who are reporting the crime and seeing if they themselves are doing this for attention.
Right, and that does get, people are always asking me how I vet the people that I talk to, and it's something that you have to be very, very careful of. I worked for a newspaper for 10 years, which helped a lot in doing that kind of thing. I can't afford to give polygraph tests, which can cost like around $1,000 to every person that I talk to, so I have to do the best I can. If I have any doubt at all, or it's something that's really way out there, I have people sign their names to sort of an affidavit type of thing. And I know David Paulides with the 411, Missing 411 does that quite regularly. It's really all you can do, and then you have to leave it up to people to make up their own minds as to whether they believe it.
All right. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Linda, thanks very much for joining us. And Exonation Linda Godfrey's website is www.lindagodfrey.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're talking about cryptids. We're talking about a lot more as the topic has opened up. Are you a skeptic or are you a believer? Send me your reply in an email. In the subject, put skeptic or believer and send it to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. Speaking about X Zone TV, check out the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV at www.simultv.com.
From our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond, you're watching the X Zone Broadcast Network. www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Channel.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Linda Godfrey's my very special guest. Her website is www.lindagodfrey.com. Linda, there's a TV show where you've got these yahoos with guns actually going out trying to kill Bigfoot, and then you've got Tom Biscardi and his group of yahoos who just go out there and they've already been caught hoaxing. What does this do for the credibility of the Bigfoot and cryptid I was going to say industry, but the cryptid Bigfoot phenomena?
Well, it doesn't help, that's for sure. And obviously different researchers and investigators, have different methods and do different things, but this sort of thing is really frowned on by the large mass of reporters, investigators, and certainly any that I know or work with. It just sets everything back. It makes people will look at one fraud or hoax exposed and say, oh, well, then none of the other ones could be right, which isn't a great way to look at it either, but that's often what you hear. So I don't think that it's a great thing at all for anyone. Plus, I think it does disrespect those witnesses who have genuinely believed that they've seen something, who have come out of their shells to sort of, put some trust in that their stories will at least be listened to, and it sort of takes that away from them. So, it's just kind of a rotten thing to do.
Why are these people called researchers and investigators? They have taken no training in to be a researcher. They certainly have no training whatsoever into the true art and the science of investigation. Why aren't they just called hobbyists? Because that's all they are.
Well, some are. Some people do this full time, and would argue that they are much more than a hobbyist. It's to me, I don't ever claim to be an expert, because I don't think enough is known about these things to call myself an expert. I call myself a longtime student of the topic and of the incidents and events, and as much as we can tell about the creatures, which is a different thing. And when people say I'm a researcher, they're not saying that they have the same thing as a master's degree, or that they've been specially trained. But when you're going out and seeking glimpses of the creatures, seeking any sort of evidence, you are researching in a way. It may not be up to snuff with many professional organizations of other types of study, but it is a type of research, and I think people have, if they're out doing the work, they have a right to call themselves that.
I disagree with you. I really do. I spent a number of years in the police force learning how to be an investigator, and to hear these people call themselves investigators, it's a joke. It's a laugh. At the very best, you're a hobbyist, whether you do it full-time or part-time, because you don't know anything about the surroundings. I don't know anybody who does this part-time or who's in it for the thrill of the sighting, who has the corresponding knowledge besides the fact that they're going to look for a Bigfoot or some other cryptid. They're not schooled in the sciences. So this is why I can't understand why they call themselves investigators and not hobbyists. The way I look at the paranormal these days, after having more than 4,600 separate interviews on all the topics of the paranormal, is that paranormal study, research, whatever you want to call it, in the year 2018 is no different from the CB craze of the 60s, where everybody had to have a CB in their car. They'd all meet at a coffee shop and talk to each other, car to car, using their CB radios. Nothing has changed. I've been doing this for 28 years now, 5 nights a week, 4 hours a night. And still, no proof whatsoever of any of the aspect of the paranormal. People say, well, Rob, why do you keep doing it? Because I want to see if there is anything out there. And if there isn't anything out there, I want to see what all these different organizations are going to do. For example, you find Bigfoot. Then what? You prove that the ghosts are real. Then what? Do people think that far ahead in all these different camps?
Well, you mean then what as far as what would they do?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. I think that people do think that far ahead, and I think that, if that proof came, it would be sort of a really world-changing event that would change everyone.
Right.
I don't know anybody, and I know a lot of people who are sort of at the core that are not dilettantes, that, do study, and there are things that you can study and learn about this, that I know a lot. I feel I know more over the past 27 years than I did when I started, that's for sure, even though I can't pronounce what these creatures are. But as far as there being some terrible crushing end, I don't think that's going to happen. I think people will just be more excited. It depends on what that explanation is, if it ever is arrived at.
So tell me, how long is society supposed to put up with the notion that there may be something out there? There isn't. And how long can these TV shows survive when when it's always the same thing? Shaky night shot. People who, really have no idea about in my opinion, what the real world is about. You're out there in the middle of the forest, you're saying all these stupid things. People who want to believe. You can't take that away from them. But how long is the public and the rest of society supposed to put up with these kind of things? Because if it wasn't for the internet, would the interest in the paranormal be as strong as it is today?
Well, I think that the internet magnifies it and somewhat downgrades it and sensationalizes it, as do many of the TV shows that come on nowadays. I think that's one big factor. But there always has been some sort of paranormal, some sort of sense that there's more than just we flesh and blood humans with our five senses, and that people have always been interested in it. You just didn't have it quite to the widespread degree that it is now. But, I mean, what would you do, Rob, if all of this was, say, proven or disproven tomorrow, or proven to be a big crock? Would you just end your show?
Oh, no, because there'd always be something else to talk about.
See,
there is always something else. If it, like my life does not revolve around the paranormal. It doesn't. I do other shows. I do news shows. I do news features. So my life isn't embedded in the paranormal. My life is embedded in reality.
Well, I could say the same thing for myself.
Sure.
I'm an artist. I actually I have plans to do some things in some other fields and go back to other interests of mine. But if this were all answered, that would be fine for me. I would just say thank you very much. This is what I've wanted to know for 27 years, and I'm glad I got to see it. So, and I think a lot of people in this believe the same way. And, there are a lot of people in the sciences. I know chemists and biologists and all sorts of people who are very interested in these things who do take part. And there also are a wide fringe element of people who are just kind of excited, who have no clue really what they're doing, or they just want to go see some strange animal.
You see, and these are the people on the fringe that are destroying any credibility that the rest have built up.
They do make it difficult.
Oh,
and
sure they do.
I got a message just yesterday saying, me and some guys want to go out and see the Beast of Bray Road. Can you tell us where it is? So we have the best chance of seeing it. Right. And can we park there? And I have to say, no, if I knew where it was, I would go there right now with a full video array and completely, nail that thing. Yeah. And they don't really get that, It's like they think it's going to Disney World and being able to expect to see Mickey Mouse standing there waving at you as you enter, and that's just not what happens.
And I think this is when the public sees this type of attitude, whether it's on television or any of these conventions, that they really get leery, as well as mainstream media is not paying next to no attention to the paranormal because it's all talk. There's no evidence. There's no smoking gun.
Well, and sometimes the media is very quick to jump on this sort of thing and raise their own ratings too. There was a photograph that was going around a few weeks ago that was supposed to have been taken by somebody driving along Bray Road.
Yeah.
And that this creature was coming up from the ditch, and it hit, 4 area newspapers that I saw it in. That must not have even looked at the picture, because every reputable person that I know in the field looked at it and went, fake, 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 fake. There were like just so many giveaways that it was very easy to tell. And yet all of these newspapers had just jumped on it. Excuse me, my dog somehow made it into where I'm working here.
Sure, no problem.
So it's not the Beast of Bray Road.
Listen, you and I have to take our final break. Please stand by, X Zone Nation. Our guest this hour is Linda Godfrey, www.lindagodfrey.com. And Linda and I will be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can get your complimentary copy of the X Chronicles newspaper at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. And for all the shows, times, and topics that are available on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And finally, the last little bit of pitch I'm going to do here right now is from my good friends at Simul TV. Check out the X Zone TV channel and the great shows, the great other shows. Plus, if you're part of Simul TV, you also get 500 video games that are included? Check it out, simultv.com.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Linda Godfrey is my guest. www.lindagodfrey.com. Linda, what do we know about these creatures? Do they live in organized homes or neighborhoods? Do they stay together? How do they treat their young? What do they eat? All these interesting questions that I'm sure some of our listeners may have.
Well, are you talking about the upright canines or Bigfoot?
Well,
or
Bigfoot particularly.
Well, Bigfoot particularly, there are many more Bigfoot sightings than there are of the upright canines. They've been going on for very long time, and I think we have a lot more kind of collective data about them. They seem to be very omnivorous. They're often seen carrying, say, a quarter of a deer, running with it over their shoulder, but they're just as often seen doing things like collecting cattails to dry and eat, or picking berries, that sort of thing. So they seem to be sort of like whatever a bear would eat. It's probably a good place for Bigfoot. They do seem to live in small social groups, from what people have said. They've been sighted numerous times with one or two other companions, very often with small ones, or even babies in their arms. I know of a woman who is a professional who has a sort of a ranch, and they have sometimes carcasses that are out in the back of it. And she has not allowed her name to be used, but she has seen several of them come out at twilight to those carcass piles, set a little one down in the snow, pick up what they wanted, and then pick the little one back up and run back off with it. And this is a person who's highly, highly credible, I'll just say that about her, and has not really wanted this to be aired or even talked about. So we know that they seem to have family groups. We know that they're very omnivorous. They seem to be more interested in defending their own territory, scaring people away, than they are in actively, pursuing and aggressively chasing people, or, acting like the boogeyman they're sometimes presented to be.
Now, just tell me why this lady who has all this evidence doesn't want to come forward.
Because she does not want to be laughed at and ridiculed. That's the main thing. She has a professional job with a reputation to keep, and does not want to be laughed at. And that's really very, very universal among witnesses. There are so many that do not come forward, or they'll just make you swear that you will never release anything about their name or way to identify them, because they don't want other people to know that they had this experience.
Does she take pictures of what she sees?
Well, she saw it one time, saw some evidence another time, the prints. Right. And they actually moved the carcass pile at one point. So it's not in the same position or area for her. There have been some other changes at the site where that took place. So, and of course, when she first saw it, she didn't have a camera on her. It was probably 10 years ago. Not everybody, especially over the age of 15, at that time was hauling around our cell phones like we're all taught to do now. So she didn't have one.
What do you think Bigfoot is?
Oh, it's so hard to answer. I think that it is a real entity. I'm not sure whether it is able to somehow coexist in the world that our five senses detect, along with some, and you start having to resort to sort of airy-fairy words, because I'm not a scientist by any means, but into the next realm or dimension or electromagnetic, whatever you'd want to call it, it seems to be just a step beyond everything else that's normal and known on this planet. The longer I study them and learn about them, and yet there are a lot of people who've had very close-up looks at them and say, no, they're just flesh and blood. They just, are very intelligent, and they have some skills that we don't have in order to keep away from us and hide.
So how do we justify the different opinions of people who have had contact with these creatures? Shouldn't the opinion be the same? Shouldn't the description be the same? Shouldn't the actions be the same?
I think that most people who see them at least will agree that they're flesh and blood at the time of the sighting, most often, or otherwise they probably wouldn't be seen, but will still allow that they can have this other dimensional quality to them. So,
do we put the dimensional quality in there just because we don't understand where they go?
Probably. I mean, we really don't. If they can go somewhere, like I said, many Native Americans that I know say it's a very long-held tradition in their tribe, and just taken as a matter of fact by many of them today that they can and do go somewhere else.
But how can we take long-standing mythologies and that were created hundreds of years ago and apply them to the world today? Isn't that called the Santa Claus syndrome?
Well, yeah. And actually my book that I just wrote sort of deals with this whole topic, and it's sort of the cyclic version or the cycles of myth and legend, that usually there's kind of an architect, or excuse me, Jung would call it an I'm sorry, I need some water just a second.
Sure.
Please. An archetype is the word I was trying to get out there, that people who are familiar with Jungian psychology would understand as a type of being or person or creature that's sort of universal to all human consciousness for whatever reason. And that there were these ancient myths. Some people believe they come from this archetype. Some people believe they were actual beings of some type that begat their own myths and legends. And then when contemporary people see these strange things, they immediately are able to label them with one of these old myths. And then as these things go forward, they sort of beget their own myths. The Beast of Bray Road legend, there was no inkling or no long time history of it. People saying that there were upright canines walking around on Bray Road before these sightings came out, in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's become legend. And that's actually one of the big things that interested me about this as a journalist, was I realized that I was having the rare opportunity to witness a legend in the making. And no matter what it turned out to be, I had no idea what I would find or wouldn't find. That alone to me was really worthwhile studying and worth it to get things down as people were observing them and what was happening in the town. And I still think that is a big and important part of studies of any of these creatures.
So what did you find?
Well, I found that it didn't seem to be a hoax. I found that there were many more people, again.
Did you find any evidence? Did you find any physical evidence?
I have actually found what look like very large canine prints. I've got photographs of some of them up in different places that really can't be identified as anything else. It's really hard for the dog man because they don't look like they're anything but canine. I don't believe that they're part human or anything like that. I don't believe if you found their DNA that it would probably show up as anything other than some type of a large wolf or wolf dog hybrid. Bigfoot's a little different. If you found a dead Bigfoot, you would know what you had. And if you got the trouble is that there's no standard for DNA to be compared to it. They can't say, yes, this matches the DNA profile of a Bigfoot, because nobody's ever established that.
Right.
They would just have to say, well, this is some unknown primate, probably. So even if you do get the evidence, again, it sounds like a cop-out to a skeptic, but it's just dealing with what you have to go on.
I don't think it just sounds like a cop-out to a skeptic. It sounds like a cop-out to anyone who can add 1 and 1 equaling 2.
Yeah, well, and like I always say, if you do think these things are bogus and you're not interested, go learn about something else. It's a wonderful wide world with, the known. We don't know what's living at the bottom of our oceans in terms of actual, real known animals.
You're right.
It's huge. There's a huge, wide area. This interests me. Maybe it won't interest you.
But still, on the other side of the coin, if you're out there telling people about what interests you, and you're making it public, then those who don't believe have every right to challenge your belief.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And I've always said, a healthy skepticism or unbelief that at least allows me to present my side, as you're doing, never bothers me.
Yeah.
Because there are lots of things that other people may think are great that I don't believe in, and that's the wonderful thing about living in a country where we have freedom of speech and the ability to believe in as we choose and speak about things as we choose. But I certainly don't expect everybody in the world to believe it. I know that when I first heard about it, I remember laughing. I thought it was ridiculous.
Right.
So I can certainly understand that some people just won't continue to make that journey.
All right, Linda, you and I have to say so long for tonight. We have run out of time talking about dogs that walk standing up and Bigfoots who have never been found, or even found traces of. And when people start talking about the Gimlin-Patterson film, to me this is a red flag that, once again, people see what they want to see. People believe what they want to believe. The fact that there has never been any evidence found to substantiate any of the claims made by members of the paranormal community proves to me that there's nothing there, gang. And I'm going to stay doing this job until you, the members of the paranormal community, have the ability to look and say to yourself and the rest of the world, you know what? You guys were right. We were wrong. There are no UFOs. There are no ghosts. There are no Bigfoot, and so on and so on and so on. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Don't go away.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.